See you later. All right, I think I've got everybody. Okay, so all right, so happy Wednesday to you. As I told you yesterday, in this business types unit today, we'll take a look at conglomerates, multinationals, limited liability partnerships, and limited liability companies, and why people do that in today's society. And those come out of the three types of businesses that we talked about yesterday. So I'll review the main advantage and disadvantage of a proprietorship, which is one person, partnership, which is two or more people, and then a corporation, which has to be set up by a lawyer and includes an article of incorporation about what they can do and what business functions they will conduct themselves in. The case study from yesterday, remember, is due Monday at 3:15, Monday the 17th. We'll have another one today. This will talk about what is the best option for a person and a cousin or relative that are going to go into a cake baking business or talking about that. What's going to be the best business structure for them? So that's what that case study is about. And then we will review for your test. Make sure that you're ready for that, which will be due on Monday as well. And I'm going to show you over the next decade sort of the advancements that you'll see in technology and what technology will do in terms of changing how companies are able to produce products, how probably within the next 10 or 15 years, there'll be a device. I would guess that will be something that you have in your house connected to the internet. And basically, you'll go online and you'll select the product that you want. And that device, right, will basically, through an additive process, what's called an additive process, three-dimensional print that device for you, right? And so I think that's where we're headed the next decade and a half in terms of what's going on. I'll show you some examples why. You can take a look at some of the things that we have on campus, where that's headed. So if you open up module 17, that's where we're at, and then I'll get the review ready. Okay, so yesterday we talked about the three types of businesses that you'll find in the United States. Remember that it's specific to the United States. The first one we talked about was a proprietorship. Second business type we talked about was a partnership, right? And the third one that we talked about was a corporation. So those were the three types of businesses and how they're organized in this country. With each of these, right, there's a different amount of people that are involved. In a proprietorship, we have one person, right? Partnership, we have two or more people. In a corporation, right, we basically have a group of stockholders who are going to be in charge. All right. Now, when we talk about sheer number, right, the number, almost 75%, right, almost 75% of the businesses in the U.S. are proprietorships. Corporations make up roughly 18%, and partnerships make up about 8%. And I know that you look more than, right, 100, but this is probably closer to 74%. In terms of sales, corporations, right, sell more than any other business type in this country. So much, in fact, right, we talked about this yesterday, 90 cents out of every dollar, right, 90 cents out of every dollar goes to a corporation in this country. That leaves 10 cents to the partnerships and the proprietorships from there. Main advantages of each, right, the ease of startup. This has the ease of startup. The advantage of basically the biggest advantage of being a corporation is that you have limited liability, right? You have limited liability, both legally and financially, right? And then the biggest disadvantage, if your proprietorship goes down, right, you are legally responsible financially and legally. Same thing with a partnership. Biggest disadvantage of the corporation is the double taxation, right? The double tax because of the corporate tax rate. So those are the big things that we covered yesterday. We talked about sort of a hybrid of proprietorships and partnerships sort of joining together with corporations in terms of a franchise, right? Franchisor and franchisee. We talked about the 7-Elevens in this area. We talked about the Subways in this area. And we talked about the McDonald's in this area, right? And basically what each of those are trying to do, corporations are trying to expand without having to use money, right? To expand into different areas. So they get a proprietor or partner to do that. In exchange for the proprietor or partner being able to use the corporate name, products, services, goods, right? Those proprietors and partners pay a royalty fee and then a monthly commission, basically, to the parent. So it's a way for both types of businesses to sort of diminish the disadvantage and focus on the advantage of another business type without actually having to go through that. So, as I said, we'll take a look at LLPs, LLCs today, conglomerates and multinationals, which are hybrids of this, and why people do that, and what you can expect from that as well. Is there any questions on this part here? So, let's do that. All right. So, if you click in module 17, on the page in the module that says LLCs and LLPs, or LLPs and LLCs, you'll come up with two sets, right? Two sets of information. So one of the things that I wanted to make sure I covered with you, because these are becoming more and more common, is what an LLC is and what an LLP is, especially over the last 10 to 15 years. An LLC is a company, right, that is known as a limited liability company because essentially they're hybrid models that combine characteristics of a corporate and a partnership or sole proprietorship. But basically it's different than a franchise though. So what you'll have happen is that there are obviously loopholes. We talk about the loopholes in the tax code, there's loopholes in creating a business. But what somebody figured out is they could use an attorney, so you have to have a lawyer. You could use an attorney and basically create a corporation-like company without having to do the articles of incorporation, have a board, put your company up for sale with a public stock option. So it is like a corporation, right? Protections of the corporation. And basically the biggest advantage to that is that personally now, you are not responsible for the loss, right? Your personal assets are going to be protected in an LLC. And so many people have started doing this, right? If you look at a number of different people, right? People that own locksmith. We went and had a copy of the key made, right? The locksmith and the company even though he's a sole proprietor, has it listed as a company name and then comma LLC, right? He does that to protect his personal assets from his business life. So people have started doing this, right, because it offers protections that proprietorships don't. They found a way to basically create a hybrid of a proprietorship or a partnership that's corporation-like in terms of legal protections for assets, but still has the freedom and advantages of the other types of business. As I said, right, personal asset protection here. Because it is not really a corporation, they're not subject to corporate tax. The government can't touch it, right? They can form a single member LLC or a multi-member LLC. So, for example, the locksmith that I went to, basically his wife is an accountant, right? And she does the books. Well, right, if the husband, right, and the wife set that up correctly, they would both be, right, in the LLC. She would be protected as well. And then that way, right, there's some protection, and there may be a way to pass on the power of this limited liability company to her if something happened to him, or the ability to pass on what she does to him if she were to pass away. Now, the disadvantages to a limited liability company is that it's more expensive to operate, because once again, you have to have a lawyer to put this together. The lawyer is the one who's going to file the paper. It's similar to a will, right? Most people who want to have a will done will go to an attorney because the attorney knows the process to legally process that, so that will is valid in the state that you reside in. You may have to pay unemployment compensation. Generally, proprietorships and partnerships are probably not subject to that. And then the hardest part is going to be a corporate bank account. After the terrorist attacks of 2001, the banking regulations became very strict. So part of the hijackers' ability to pull off what they did is they had money funneled through bank accounts through basically fake identifications and people lying about who they were. And so now, even then, for example, if you were to set up even a booster club here at Liability High School, you're going to have to prove that there's a board that contains members of the public, that booster club has a basically set of articles of rules, how they're going to raise money, what their purpose is. You're going to have minutes showing that the board was duly elected through a fair process. And then when you come to the bank to set up an account that's similar to a corporate bank account, you're going to have to provide federally approved identification. If you can't do that, you can't get a bank account in the name of, say, Rigetti Choir Booster, right? Rigetti Band Booster, Rigetti Math Booster, whatever it was. They won't let you open an account like that because of what happened back then. All right, questions on that portion? So the only difference between an LLC and an LLP is going to be basically the format. So when we talk about a limited liability, so an LLP is a limited liability partnership. And this one is a little more specific. You'll see this a lot, especially in this area. You'll have doctors, pediatric medical group, I think, the ones down by the hospital, down by Miriam, are an LLP. And so what they do is they basically share that huge two-story office building, and it's just a share agreement, right? But each of the doctors is not liable for the other. If one doctor goes bankrupt, if one doctor is basically sued for malpractice, the others don't. But it's a way to take some advantages of a partnership and some of the protections of a corporation, right, where your personal assets are not at risk, and join together and make a bigger practice. So most of the time you'll see lawyers and doctors do this. They're trying to expand it to other areas. Accountants have started doing this as well, dentists, but it is the same sort of idea and protection. It's just a hybrid of some of the best of the three types of businesses, while sort of shedding some of the risk that you might see. Any questions on that? Okay, so on the next page, share with you real quick the conglomerates and multinationals, and I'll show you some of the biggest mergers over the past couple of years. So on the next page, this goes over conglomerates and multinationals. So conglomerates, right, are simply two or more companies that join together to create a broad or broader market. And what you'll find there, the example I always give is this. Let's say that you have Frito-Lay, right, chip manufacturer, and Pepsi join together, right? Well, one is food, right? Pepsi is a beverage, right? If those two join together and create a conglomerate, then you've got more of the market, right? You've got food and beverage, where each of them before just sort of have one market. It's a way to minimize risk, right? Way to flatten out your risk, right? But also stand the chance of increasing your revenue. It's the same idea. Conglomerate is almost like what we did with the stock market game, where we invested in stocks, mutual funds, and bonds. And we did that because if one of the sectors in investing got too low, we would have the others as a buffer. And this is the same idea. Conglomerates are the same idea as that. And so conglomerates are companies that are generally in different parts of an industry, could be even different industries, joining together to try to mitigate risk and increase profits. So they, due to diversification, they can reduce their risk because they're involved in different industries and different sectors, right? The Great Recession in 2008 started because of a housing crisis that was caused by bad loans or loans not being repaid in the housing market. So if you were part of that housing sector, you suffered. But if you're in a conglomerate where other sectors may not have been suffering as much, you might have been okay. This last pandemic shutdown, right? Restaurants were hit probably the hardest out of anybody. If you only were a company that had basically your money, your investment in the restaurant industry, you're toast, right, for the last 15 months, 16 months. So conglomerates a way of limiting risk and then increasing profits, right? They can create a capital market within a group to allow growth. Conglomerate can grow by acquiring other companies who share the more discounted, showing greater earnings, right? Because there'll be one company. Now, disadvantages to a conglomerate. Sorry. All right. Management costs generally increase because you still keep all of the same management level. Have faced many accounting-related problems, right? Group disclosure because of different company rules. Taxation structure is not a benefit. There's still tax and corporate tax rates, so it doesn't offer that much of a benefit. No development of innovation due to inertia, right? It's very hard to innovate across industries. You're very good at what your industry does and what your company does across both of your development. Focus is lost and it's difficult to manage unrelated, well-diversified business effectively, right? And that's because you're in different parts of the economic sectors. And then due to multinational business, conglomerates often contract cultural difference due to which values are destroyed, right? It's very hard in a multinational setting to do businesses that way. And So when you look at multinationals are generally conglomerate. Apple has, right, locations within the United States, locations within China. They do business all over the world. So all of these different corporations, right, that do business in other countries are known as multinationals. The advantages of that are the jobs that they provide people in those areas, the spread of new technology, right, and then basically elevating the standard of living. It's the same thing, right? Toyota is a Japanese company, but they have factories in the United States. They have provided jobs to auto workers here, right? Reinvested in the economy. Lucid over in Arizona is an electric car company that started up with Chinese factory. So there's differences of it going back and forth, right? There's a huge now warehouse miles from town where there needs to be nothing but that. And they're building like 4 phases of the factory. They're hiring about 1,200 to 1,800 people per phase, right? Those are jobs that would be here. And the same thing happens for American companies that go, for American companies that go abroad. Disadvantage is a lot of people say that culture is affected in the country in which we enter, that the wages that we're paying these people outside of our country are federally mandated to meet the minimum, right? And then the argument in the counter is that hey, this is way more money than we have, and that the working conditions over there aren't protected like they are here, right? Where you have working compensation, you have OSHA regulations about how you can work, how long you can work for breaks, safety things. So there's a number of different things that go on. But what I want to do is show you some of the 10 biggest mergers that we've had recently. And I want to talk to you about technology and what you'll see over the next little bit of period. So let's see if I get this right. Okay, so these would be examples of conglomerates. These would be companies merging together. Most of the time, they might be in 2 different sectors of a related economy. They might be in the same economic sector. It just depends, but these are the biggest acquisitions recently here that we've had.
Let's talk merger.
Right. So what that does, right, is set up just a way for companies, right, to take advantage of a couple of industries, right? So either take a bigger market share of what they're already doing, or allowing them to expand into different areas, right? Expand into different areas. And we see this all of the time. Now, we have a federal trade commission. Any of those mergers have to be approved, right? So let's say the Sprint and T-Mobile wanted to join together, that has to be approved. If AT&T and Verizon wanted to join together, that has to be approved. It would still be a conglomerate merger because of the size, but it depends on how much the market share that they would take up. Now, one of the things that we have seen over a period of time is technological changes that help make things more efficient and bring some goods and services to people in a way that they have not seen before. And I can use even what's on campus here as an example. So if you have been into Mr. Maxwell, if you've taken Mr. Maxwell's computer innovation class, one of the things that you might have noticed is that he has a 3D printer, right? He has a 3D printer. And so in your visual technology class with Mr. Maxwell, you can divide three-dimensional objects and basically print them out. And so when this first started happening about 8, 9, 10 years ago, the 3D printer was pretty large, right? It was basically the size of a large speaker that came up to about here. It was probably as wide as this area here. And basically what you did is you took a piece of metal or a piece of plastic, some sort of hard material, placed it inside the three-dimensional printer. The computer software, he was using StreetSpace at the time, sent basically design notes to the three-dimensional printer, and the printer would cut, right, the device, the product, whatever it is. Let's say you're going to make a little pointer pin like this, and the shavings would all fall down at the bottom. You'd have to clean that out, and then you put in another piece of metal or another piece of plastic and do it again. And their year-end project for the second-year students in this class was to create one of these things, right? Well, about 7 years ago, people figured out, hey, what if we don't cut materials? What if we add to it? And so this idea of additive manufacturing came about. And in additive manufacturing, you still have a 3D printer, and these obviously over time, just like television screens have gone from big vacuum tubes that took up an entire wall, right, to basically screens that are now 6 inches thick, right, the entire unit. A form of manufacturing that uses three-dimensional lasers to add layer upon layer upon layer to get good. And so now when you create that toy or pencil or whatever it is, basically these 3D printers, there's no more waste. It's a better use of resources. And so what they do is using a robotic arm, Y and X-axis, sometimes a Z, depending on how good it is, they basically just build layer upon layer upon layer. And you create a three-dimensional object with no waste. All right, so I'm going to show you some examples and talk about the possibilities of what this can do to finish this up. And as I said, what I think you'll see, and we'll talk about this after the videos, but what I think you'll see is you're going to see devices that are going to be available for your house, where instead of clicking on Amazon and ordering a product and they ship it to you, you're basically going to click on a product in the morning, right? It's going to send, after you pay, the information to this device, and when you come home from work, right, the product is there, right? So usually Amazon Prime, you get things in 2 days. Well, now you're going to get it in basically the time it takes you to go to work. So let's take that away from me. Draw Kobe's permission. It should kick them off. So let's go to the first example here. Okay, so this first video, about 2 minutes long, is 8 years old. All right, so this is from 8 years ago, and this was the first idea of additive manufacturing. The one thing that I want you to notice in this is that when they are making these houses, right, these three-dimensional printed houses, these roofs here, all of them, doesn't matter the long ones, the short ones, were not done with additive process. They were not able to do basically something at an angle, right? They're only able to do along the y-axis and the x-axis, up and down and left to right. They were not able to do it at an angle. You would have to have a robotic arm, right, that was able to move at something similar to your shoulder or your wrist. So this is, like I said, about 7 or 8 years ago. And then in 3 years, I want you to see what difference the additive manufacturing and technology has done. All right, this is a company over in China.
Actually printed out by a 3D printer. This printing method was developed by private inventors.
The 10 standalone one-story houses look normal at first sight, but the walls are made up of layers of construction waste and cement instead of brick and mortar. However, technological limitations prevented the building's roofs from being printed. The buildings will serve as offices at a high-tech industrial park in Shanghai. We visited the company's workshop in Shanghai's neighboring city of Suzhou to find out precisely how the buildings were printed. The walls are primarily made out of material refined from construction waste and mixed with cement. The wall structure was scrupulously designed to ensure soundness and practicality. The printer used to make the walls was designed and made by inventor Liability. His company and research center are all made out of 3D printed walls. It took about 12 to build his office, which covers an area of over 10,000 square meters. Constant 3D printing assembly line usually consists of 4 printers. He added that the new technology is cost-effective and environmentally friendly.
Look, in every store, we need a mining freedom to build systems and solve them into pieces. That when mining and manufacturing process, they damage our mining value. And with 3D printing, we're not looking at environment. Instead, we are recycling maintenance, and by using a special treatment, we can take them into materials like this. We can provide building materials according to the customer's needs. Any thickness and color or sizes is possible too.
Mon has been researching 3D printing for 12 years. He believes his technology can change the way we think about housing and construction.
With 3D printing, in the future, we can build good buildings with reliable materials and without waste. Waste from the demolished buildings, industrial waste, or even materials can be used to build structures without a recycling treatment. This will ensure healthy work environment for construction workers, as well as reduce construction costs.
Since technology still needs to be improved, we added that 3D printing can be used in skyscrapers in the future.
Okay, so that was 7 years ago. In 2017, 4 years ago, 3 years after that, look at the difference of what additive manufacturing does when you add in that third axis, the z-axis, and the way that they can manipulate buildings now. So this is 3 years later right here. Right? So you can see the curved walls and what they've done. And then what you have now, right, and this is a year after this, is the following company in Austin, Texas, and what they plan to do.
So having strong, sturdy walls, having a door that you can close at night, it's something that we take for granted. Being able to lock on the door and be safe. For many of these animals for years, sometimes even a lifetime, they don't have that opportunity to have a safe shelter. So when they move into a new square community, when they move into a safe home, families' lives are transformed.
Our first product is a 3D printer that can print the house in 24 hours for half the cost. Storing the product is a concept house, and the good news is we've done it. We printed the first in the United States that's 3D printed. And for us, it's just the beginning. We're really well around grass and we've done here out some Texas. We're doing that in elevations where we just have some more. We're going to take a entire village.
Right. So what you're going to see, right, what you're going to see in the possibilities in terms of what goes on is the ability to move these devices to different places and create housing where there might be a housing shortage, right? Where there's not enough affordable housing, where there may be a high percentage of homelessness, or a natural disaster, right? Natural disaster 13 Katrina in what, 2003 was it? I think, right? Homes, hundreds of thousands of homes get wiped out. The ability to come into a location and at least provide some temporary housing in less than 24 hours. With these machines, I think you'll see as an advancement in terms of what goes on. But as I said, I think in the next decade, decade and a half, what we're going to find is that it's going to be more of an appliance-like thing, right? Dishwashers, washers and dryers, refrigerators. You're going to have a device in your house connected to the internet. Basically, you're going to go online and you're going to want your product, right? Maybe it is a set of plates, maybe it's a cup, maybe it is a whatever it is, right? And that 3D machine is going to print that out for you. So there'll be some things to look at as we come through, right? And in our economic system, one of the advantages of our economic system is that Those that develop technology, those that develop advancements give patent rights, copyrights to those things, and they're able to profit off of that. So you see that come about through everything. Go ahead and go to Kahoot.it, and we'll review real quick for the unit test. And then we'll talk a little bit about your second case study. We'll ask you to compare and contrast, talk about advantages and disadvantages of the business type organizations and what you would recommend happening. And we'll be done for the week. Okay, so your game pin is 124, 1347. If you go to Kahoot.it, you'll be able to join us. All right, which of the following is an example of a merger? Which of the following is an example of a merger? Right. So one company combines with another company is a merger. All right, what is needed to start a proprietorship? Startup cost. You need money, right? You need money. We talked about that yesterday. Right? Which type of business has shareholders? Which type of business has shareholders? Right? Corporation. Corporation is the only business type that is allowed to sell shares of stock. All right. The obligation to pay a debt is known as what? The obligation to pay a debt is known as what? Liability. Liability. All right. The best way for corporations to raise money is what? selling stock. Buying bonds would take away money. Giving shares to the founders would take away money. Demanding money from the government, that bailouts hardly ever happen. All right, which of the following statements is true? Right? And an LLP partners cannot be legally responsible. We just talked about that today, right? You're personally not responsible for the other person's dispute. Most large businesses are what? Yeah, most large businesses are corporations. All right, a partnership in which none of the partners are limited partners is known as what? It's a general partnership. Everybody's the same level. General partnership. Everybody's the same level. All right, almost all of nonprofits in this country have what in common? Right? They offer services. Remember, nonprofits do not have a goal of making profit out of the reason they're running business. So that's why the other three don't make sense. Payments by corporations to stockholders are known as what? This is one of the 5 things I had you research in the stock market competition homework. The dividend, right? Dividend, quarterly payments paid out to stockholders on the profit of a company. Most small businesses in this country are organized how? Most small businesses are organized how? Proprietorships. Proprietorships, single person businesses. What type of merger would Dairy Queen and Baskin Robbins be if they joined together? Horizontal, right? Same industry, same level of production, horizontal merger. If you had Verizon, Pacific Gas and Electric, and IBM merging, which is the best way to describe this fictitious corporation? Conglomerate. Different industries, different levels of production, different things completely, right? That would be an example of a conglomerate merger. And then this one, if you have two or more companies, different levels within the same industry, what kind of merger is it? Vertical, right? Within the same industry, but at different levels, it's a vertical merger. What is the purpose of the Securities and Exchange Commission of this country? Regulate stock trades. Regulate stock trades. All right, a business license is required for all business types and firms. That's true or false? True. Right, that's true. Most Subways and McDonald's and working in Santa Maria are franchises. That's true or false? That is true. Right, that is true. And then this, the most common type of merger that you find in the United States is what? Horizontal. Horizontal. Sole proprietorships do not have to deal with what? Franchise fees and royalties. Only the franchisor and franchisee would deal with such things. Don't have that sole proprietorship. Corporation is essentially owned by what group? Who owns corporations? Stakeholders, right? Stakeholders who have stock in the company are essentially owners. Most cooperatives in the United States are involved in one industry. Agriculture. Agriculture. Right? The largest employer of employees in the United States at the end of 2015 was what? Who employs the most people in the United States? Federal government. Federal government does. Five of the top 10 employers were involved in the food industry. Is that true or false? That's true, right? It's a necessity. Food, water, shelter, you'd expect that those would have the most. This type of business is the most popular model for the U.S. economy. terms of number. Which is the most common type of business organization? Proprietorship, right? Single person owned businesses. Right? Which of the following is required to start up as a sole proprietor type of business? Both, right? Both a business license and capital is required in all 50 states. All 50 states, you open a business, you have to have a license. Which of the following is a disadvantage of owning a sole proprietorship? Right? You lose all your property if your business fails. You're legally responsible, you're financially responsible for what goes on. Which of the following is an advantage to owning your own business? Right? You respond quickly to change in the marketplace. The rest of them are generally negatives. And nobody better get this wrong. Which of the following is an example of a merger? We have this right at the beginning. Right? One company combines with another company. That is a merger. All right. You have a podium today. All right. Doing it up. Matt. Okay. So there. All right. So remember that you can access that review game as many times as you want. Non-tablet device or cell phone, computer basically. You're going to click on that link, you're going to play. There's a tablet or a cell phone, you have to download the app and put in that game pen that's available to you for quite a number of weeks. The last thing that you have to do, market and business structure case study, deals with proprietorship, partnerships, advantage, disadvantages of each. Basically, you and a cousin are going to be thinking about starting a wedding cake business. What is the best way to organize them? There's different links to different parts of articles that you have to read. But basically, you'll submit that along with the one from yesterday. Will be due at 3:15 on Monday the 17th. It'll start showing up. It's available till the end of the quarter. June 4th is the last day for everything for seniors. Again, the review game is available to you as many times as you want to practice that with a number of those questions on the test. When you're ready to take the test, you'll click in here. Your test will consist of the same setup. So on the left-hand side, you'll have your test questions. On the right-hand side is where you'll put your answers on there. All right? So have a good weekend. Good seeing you, and we will see you on Monday. All right? See you soon. Take care. Thanks, guys. Thanks for coming. We'll see you later. Bye-bye. We'll see you later. Take care.